Welcome everyone to the game between two amazing players. We have the legend Boris Gelfand playing with the white pieces he's played at the World Championship match, and we have Nihal Sarin with the black pieces. What's interesting is that Nihal is playing for an Israeli chess club, Ashdod Elite Chess Club, while Boris is also playing for an Israeli chess club, Rishon LeZion. This is actually a game from the World Rapid Team Championship 2025. We are putting it out right now because we never published this and it's an amazing game. So sit back and enjoy. E6, C4. Boris always loves to play D4 openings. B6, a slightly offbeat line by Nihal, letting Boris take over the center. Pawn to E4, and now Nihal puts his bishop on B7, attacking the pawn. Okay, Boris can play bishop D3, but he instead puts his knight out, and Nihal pins it, attacking the pawn. Bishop comes out to D3, defending the pawn, and now boom, F5. If you take here, G2 is hanging, so knight E2. This is one of the specialities of Boris Gelfand. He also played it with Nodirbek Abdusattorov. He gives up a pawn in the center with the aim that later he'll castle and pick up the pawn. But knight comes out, defending the pawn. And is Nihal well prepared for this? Because Boris definitely understands this very well. He castles, black castles as well. And now winning this pawn can be done with bishop G5. So now you want to take this later. Bishop comes back, breaks the pin. And Boris can take on F6 and take on E4. So he does it, takes, and now takes back the pawn in the center. Knight to C6. He brings his knight into the center here. Nihal, he is well prepared. He has 16 minutes on the clock. Queen D2 played by Nihal Sarin. And do you want to play the move D5? No, he first plays his knight to E7. While black has the bishop pair, white has more space, and white can take the bishop whenever he wants to. So I would give white a small edge, but Nihal puts his knight on F5, keeps up the pressure on the D4 pawn. And now Boris goes knight G3. He's ready to give up this pawn, but actually you lose a piece if you do that. So that's the reason why now knight G3 is very interesting. Nihal plays pawn to G6. And his point is, after takes, maybe he wants to take with the G pawn, even though it could potentially weaken his king a bit. Boris takes the bishop because the bishop could have dropped back and you don't want that bishop to live. Queen takes F6. And now bishop comes to E4, offering a trade of bishops. And Nihal calculates, takes the bishop, knight takes, attacks the queen. The queen can drop back to G7. Let's see where Nihal goes here. Maybe even queen H4, not a bad idea. Hitting the knight and the pawn. He goes back queen G7. Can white go D5? I like this move actually, pawn to D5. But Boris wants to keep the structure as it is. He goes rook E1, makes a lot of sense. And Nihal brings his rook to E8. And we have someone blocking the camera view here. Knight G3 with a draw offer there, it seems, by Boris Gelfand. And Nihal Sarin, well, will he accept the draw or not is the question. I think he simply played his king to H8. And now pawn to D5 played here by Boris. He pushes the pawn forward. And Nihal calmly plays pawn to E5. This gives Boris a very nice square for his knight. He takes though. He takes, giving Nihal this very nice pawns. But F4 was his idea. To stop the pawns, give black a passer. But Nihal doesn't take it. He first plays D6. He's like, Boris, if you want to take. I'll have two fluid pawns that would run down the board. So Queen E3 played by Gelfand. And now Nihal, I guess he calmly waits. He goes rook E7. I'm expecting Nihal to push his pawn to E4 at some point. But this is such a static endgame, right? Like, although black could get a passer, there's nothing really happening. where you can outwit a player like Gelfand. Oh, by the way, there is a threat now. Pawn takes pawn and you lose the rook. So Nihal definitely creating some threats. Boris playing rook e2. And his point is, of course, if you take, he'll take and give up queen for 2 rooks. So first Nihal goes a5, reducing the number of weaknesses in his position. Now there's only one weak pawn which is firmly defended and difficult to attack. Queen to c3 played, pinning here, and the pressure on the black center is increasing a bit. So e4 played, and now the queens will get traded. On the clock, Nihal has 11 minutes while Boris has only 3 minutes. Rook e3 played. He brings his rook up. He wants to swing his rook over to g3 maybe, or just take the queen with the rook. Queen takes c3, rook takes, and now king g7. And I think you can also try and put your king to e3. It's a nice blockader there, and then your 2 rooks can try to create play on the queen side. Oh, a4 played. I was wondering if Boris wants to go b3, a3, b4, like slowly try to expand, but he simply blocks it. I think Boris believes in his position. King f6. Nihal now has some plans. Yes, he can put pressure on the g file. King f2, nice move. And he can at some point try for the c6 break. Rook comes to g8. And you don't want to play the move g3 because then h5, h4 comes like with a tempo, it feels. And it does weaken the king side structure. So he does go rook g3. He's offering a trade of rooks. An interesting moment in the game. Should you trade on g3? Should you go rook g7? He takes, and now pawn takes. He goes king takes. Pawn takes was also possible, but Boris wants to keep the structure as is. Black king would have loved to come to e5, d4, but the pawn on f4 stops that from happening. h5, king comes back to f2. Boris is speeding up. Nihal has 5 more minutes on the clock, and h4. Now, Nihal has this as a weakness on g2. He can always attack it somehow. King e3, and Boris is like, okay, you can attack it, Nihal, I'll defend it. Where is your next trick coming from? He goes rook g7, rook e2 played, and now king e7. So Nihal is going king d7 and maybe c6, the break that we were talking about. King d4 played. Can you go and attack this pawn with rook g4? Well, first king d7. Boris is definitely feeling the pressure because the time is also running a bit low. He goes rook d2 and leaves the rook there. Now Nihal, it's not an easy thing to break through. Rook g8 makes a waiting move, forcing Boris to come up with something, and Boris says, I'll wait as well. What's the big deal here? So c6 played, and the question is, should you take or should you let white take, because black take, because take maybe the c file would open up later. So he takes, king takes c6, and b3 played. Okay, I think it's time for us to go in rook g4 perhaps. Not sure. He comes back, king d7, maybe putting the rook on king on e6, and then maybe rook d8 and d5 could be an idea. So king e3. Black can now play king e6. He plays it, rook to d2, stopping d5 move. So the rook defends, also is on the offensive. And Nihal goes rook g7. He's asking Boris, what's your move? You can't make pawn moves easily. Moving the rook away could be met with d5. You can't move it up because g2 hangs. So he goes king f2. It's waiting somehow, but you can feel it that the pressure is mounting. And now what's Nihal's next plan? Rook g8. Okay. Okay. This guy is kind of playing around. King e3. Yeah, comes up again. Rook g4. So now the king cannot move because the pawn hangs. The rook, okay, it has to move somewhere. Rook c2, rook e2, rook f2. He goes rook f2. Makes sense. And now d5 is what we were speaking about. d5 takes, and maybe the king could try and come to b4. He does play d5. And now a very, very important moment in the game. Can we go king d4? Well, he moves the rook here. Where? Exactly. Rook d2. Oh, blunders. Big blunder, and now Nihal has a big chance. Pawn to d4 is the move, but it's such a tough move. If you take with the king, you lose f4. If you take with the rook, you lose g2. Can Nihal find it? He's thinking. He has 3 minutes, 14 seconds on the clock. We can't see Nihal. He's been blocked by someone. d4, found it. What a move. Brilliant. Brillante. King takes. Rook takes f4 because you could never take with the rook here. g2 was too important. And now Nihal has somehow made a breakthrough. King e3, rook f1. And Boris is playing but h3. And the point is, if you take gh3, rook f3 check, and I have two passers connected and it's completely winning, and he resigns. Nihal Sarin, what an endgame play. Absolute genius. Absolute genius there. And of course, Boris is not so happy with his play. He is somehow quite surprised that he went wrong in that endgame. But somehow Nihal Sarin's patience, those quiet moves, his understanding of the rook endgame, continuously trying for something, gave his team a very important win. And I hope that you enjoyed this endgame lesson here from Nihal Sarin. I think it was truly special. The pressure and tension got to Boris as he played the move rook d2 here, which looks a great move but turned out to be a mistake. And then Nihal went d4 and won the game. Instead, in this position, you could have taken, king takes, and now played the move rook d2 check. If king c5 trying to get here, you can try and start getting more active with check, king b4, rook c6, but it's already quite dangerous with b3 hanging, g2 hanging. So I can understand why he didn't want to do this. The other option was king d4. And after takes, you don't want to be taking with the king because then you have h3, which is a very nice move. If g3, then I simply swing my rook over. And if g takes h3, also these are weak pawns and the rook can move over. So ideally you must take it with the pawn. And yes, the structure is bad, but I think the main point is that even the b6 pawn is weak and white gets counterplay. So this could have helped Boris to hold on to equality in the game and draw the game.